Oki, Sinadapi, um, Oki and Blackfoot means my spirit's really happy to see your spirit. And Sinadapi just means how are you doing? So welcome to the Native Wellness Institute's 200th. Welcome to the 200th Power Hour. Um, Native Wellness Institute has been in this since March. And what we're bringing to you is positive, productive, and proactive hour in the middle of the day. And so, for those of you out there, we just want to congratulate you, first of all, for voting. And we want to congratulate you, even if you haven't heard all of the results, that you're sitting down to do some self care. And so my name is my English name is Theda Newbreast, and I guess I'm turning into kind of like a grandma or auntie who likes to visit about topics that will help with our healing, not only now but during the pandemic. And so the topic, and we have some guests that will be joining us in a little bit. And we've asked the topic. I want to tell a little history about it. Native Wellness Institute, for the past year, has been helping CDC and the National Indian Health Board. We ran focus groups with tribes from Alaska, villages from Alaska, Oklahoma, Greater Plains, all of the rancherias in California, all of the Southwest, the state of Washington. And the focus groups were to ask the tribes, number one, how do we stop violence in Indian country? And then the second question, which is very important, so we'll be speaking about that. Welcome, Aurora. And we'll be speaking about, is called, what are the protective factors and what are the cultural resiliencies that help protect Native families from violence in Indian country. So I wanted to start explain. So one of the protective factors that all of these tribes, and we just presented it to the Center for Disease Control a couple of weeks ago, because they're going to take this information and that's how it will affect the funding that comes from all of Health and Human Services down through Department of Justice, CDC, SAMHSA. But the reason I wanted to share the history is one of the protective factors was when a person has cultural identity and they really know who they are. And so I was, and then I was, I always like to say, well, who am I? Do I know who I am? But I just think so. The topic is around identity trauma. And so I wanted to share a couple of stories before we bring our guests on, and a couple of stories to with my own experience. I'm 64 years old, and when I was 7.5 years old, I was taken from the Blackfeet Reservation, the Amskapi and we went on what is called the relocation program. And when we went on the relocation program, we had cultural shock. And I remember this one story. I see you coming on, Aurora. Aurora, we'll have you introduce yourself in a few minutes. I remember I was like, we were living in what would be called the ghetto on 7th Street in Berkeley, California. And I was, I think, around the 5th or 6th grade. This is just a memory I had, and it has to do with the trauma of identity. And so all of my friends were Ruth Puel. Her whole family spoke Spanish. They came up from Mexico. They were first generation, and they called themselves Chicano or Chicana. And then my other friends were all African American, and they would take me to their church. And I remember going. Just this memory because I had only known Blackfeet stuff, Blackfeet culture, and I was amazed because they'd take me to the Baptist church, and they said, "Watch people when they get the Holy Ghost." So we'd be in the back of the church, and would watch. And I just remember my eyes were getting big because I could see I could see people when they, in their interpretation, in their culture, had received the Spirit of God. And it worked for them because I could see how they would sing, and some of them would drop to the floor and start trembling. And so from my cultural lens, which was Blackfeet, I thought, oh, Ishtabatapi is blessing them. So I was making sense from my cultural identity, watching African American people find goodness in their lives. So the story, there was these other families, and I went to their house, and I was a little girl, and this has to do with the shame. It was one of the first times I experienced shame about being who I was. And the adults were talking about, oh, those darn Indians, they get a job, they get that first paycheck, and they effing get drunk, and look what they do. They don't show up for work. Or, oh, those damn Indians, they don't come to work on Monday, because they're too hungover. And then they said, and all those damn Indians, they leave early on Friday because they got to start the weekend of drinking. And I was in cultural shock, and I was feeling this shame. And so I'm a fifth grader. And then they realized what they were saying, and they looked at me, and they looked down because they remembered I was a little Indian girl. And they looked at me and they said, oh, and they didn't apologize, but they said, aren't you Indian? But I was smart enough, Nitsitapi. They were asking me this question, and I didn't trust them. So I stuttered like this. I just remember saying, no, I'm Filipino. I chose a different identity because I thought they were going to hurt me.
Yeah.
I was a fifth grader, and I thought they were going to hurt me. So that was a story of identity trauma. And then, later on, I'll just one little small snippet, and then I want Aurora to come in and visit with us, and we might have some other guests come also. It had to do with the ability to dance, because I was raised Indian dancing, traditional dancing, and Indian songs, but I love Motown. I loved Al Green. I loved, the Temptations, and I loved street. We used to have street parties in the 60s. We would block off the streets and have loud music, and everybody would dance. And let's see, I think I was in the 8th grade. Okay, so in the 8th grade, I noticed that, my Indian hair, I didn't have hair like African Americans and all my friends when we were having a street party. So I went to the store and I bought an Afro wig. So I bought this big old Afro. So I had this big old Afro wig that I would put on, and I would go to the street party because just for that time I was going to be African American. And to me, that was celebratory, but that was another example of cultural identity that I went through, that I would have because I would try to be like the African American. Okay, so I'm gonna pause there, and we're having dialogue, and I want to welcome all of you to, again, the 200. NWI has been doing this for 200, power hours, and thank you, Shailene. Shailene is our we have all of the production, and she's in the background, and so I want to welcome our guests. And so, Aurora, would you please just introduce us and talk about this topic area in any way that you would like to share with our audience?
Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Aurora Mamea, and I say Oki to my relatives. Oki, Nitanako Matamentiaki, first singing woman. And I am an enrolled member of the Blackfeet Nation. I work here in San Francisco at Native American Health Center. I've been here for 20 years. I started out as medical assistant, and then later on moving into the behavioral health department. And more recently, in the past 4 years, managing 2 SAMHSA grants here in the youth department, substance abuse prevention and suicide prevention for youth as well. We provide cultural prevention services here. Native American Health Center began in 1972 as a result of the Relocation Act, the high need for culturally competent care for Native Americans. And my grandma was a part of the Relocation Act out here, along with my grandpa and her 8 children. You shared stories of, Theda, you shared stories of, living out here in the San Francisco Bay Area. And there's many different other hubs where the Relocations Act happen as well. I know over in Chicago, right, Detroit, Theda, and I heard down in New Mexico somewhere. Was it Albuquerque?
Albuquerque, and then Los Angeles was a big, and Seattle. And then actually even Portland area. Yeah, a lot of.
yeah. A lot of people were sent out all over the place, and my coworker should be joining us pretty soon, Michelle Antone. I think she's having difficulties getting on. I just forwarded the email to her again. Okay. So yeah, a lot of the work that we do, there you are, hey, Michelle. A lot of the work we do out here, we're dealing with, a lot of multi-ethnic backgrounds here, and we work in a wellness department. We are a community wellness department here. And so the result of that Relocation Act, all the Native American people going out to the cities, they say it was the government's plan to thin out the blood, and that in hopes that one day there won't be that many tribally enrolled members, that they won't have to owe us anything, will be erased. And to say also, not that, a lot of people think that we get benefits, and it's all majority a myth. We don't get, a majority of us don't get free college. A majority of us put ourselves through our own college. Like I know many natives that put themselves through college. We don't get free money. We pay our taxes. So yeah, it's pretty much, a lot of it's a myth. Yeah, so the work we do out here, wellness prevention, we come across many mixed cultural backgrounds. We come across some community members that they know that they're Native. They might have been adopted out, but they don't know where to even begin to trace their background, their Native background. And I'm very thankful that I was fortunate enough to be able to have that connection back home on the Blackfeet Reservation, attending school there for 11 years, and having dealt with that my own self. My mom met my dad out here in the Bay Area, here at the Indian Center, the San Francisco Indian Cultural Center, when she was a youth, and he was working there. He's my dad is what is he? His mom was Apache Indian and Mexican, and I never knew this, but his dad is full-blooded German. So I have some German in me.
Woo, right on.
I'm having a hard time. I'm really having a hard time proving it.
Hey.
I always say the German is in my pinky, you know, my pinky toe or my baby toe or my nose. It's in my nose, right? But we come from matriarchal societies, and I was raised with my mom. My mom took me away at a young age from my dad, and I'm thankful. You know, I'm thankful because I know that looking back, my mom was protecting me from heartaches, you know, and hardships. And I know a lot of moms that do that, you know, to take care of their children and try their best to give their children a better life. And so, yes, we were out here in the Bay Area, and there was a time that my mom came out here. Her name was Olivia Bearchild. She went to, and her siblings, they went to the Catholic schools here in San Francisco, and she talks about racism, having to deal with racism, and having her hair pulled in class, being teased and harassed and taunted in class because of her last name. Their last name was Running Crane and Bearchild. Can you imagine that? There was a time when my mom grew up that she wanted to change her name. Back in the day, it was a shameful thing to say you were Native or you were Indian, you know, to be thought of as Indian. A lot of people of brown color would be mistaken for Indian and judged, you know. There was racism around it, that even if you weren't Native, you were something else, but mistaken as Indian, you would have nothing to do with that. People even claim to have, what is it, like, people even claim to be Spanish, you know, or anything other than Indian, anything. Yeah. And there was a time that my mom wanted to change her last name from Bearchild to Fairchild, you know, so that was identity trauma right there too, you know, just so she could fit in better, you know, with society. Um, if any of you have ever read Wilma Mankiller's book, she talks about in a certain section of her book how they lived in Hunters Point. My grandma and them lived in Hunters Point too with their kids, and they talk about the violence. There was lots of violence there, and racism as well. And my uncles and aunties were always getting in fights, and they didn't know what we were. You know, they didn't know. They probably assumed we were Mexican, just like a lot of times nowadays walking around here in a city, we easily throughout the years get mistaken as Filipino or Mexican, and or they try to speak to us in their language. And I like to think of a comedian, a native comedian here in the Bay Area, how she said it. She said, they come up to you and they talk to you in their language, and when you don't answer back in their language, they look at you like you're denying your heritage. Yeah, so just wanted to touch a little bit on that. And we always talk about me and my coworker Michelle here. Hey, Michelle. Hey.
Hi.
We always talk about that we grew up in the 80s. You know, we're like from the 80s era. We're about the same age. Michelle's my big sister. I call her my big sister, and I'm really grateful and fortunate to work with you. You've done a lot of important community work here with our community, and you are a pillar in our community. And I just want to, you know, thank you and acknowledge you for all that you do for our community. And we talk about that we're from the 80s kids, you know, and just how even back in the 80s, you know, we went through the same thing of trying to fit in with the society back then of the 80s style, you know, having perms in our hair, right? Big hair, right?
Yes.
And back in the days of breaking, popping and locking, right? That was back in the day when we were in middle school and Browning. And I remember there was a few kids that were popping and locking as well. And watching the movie Break In, you know, and you start to wish that you lived in the ghetto too, right? Because you want to identify and feel like you belong. You feel like you belong there. And we even talk about like growing up in an era of, you know, that saying back in the day that children, what they used to say, they say children are meant to be seen but not heard. Remember that?
Yes.
Yeah. And so coming from that era too, and me and Michelle are the oldest in our family's oldest sister. And so just coming from that, those backgrounds, and your parents really taking a stricter role with you when they raise you, you know, and you don't really have that freedom to find who you really are, uh,
Mhm.
and you just have to listen to what your mom and your parents tell you, you know, and be obedient. Unlike after my next three sisters were born, my mom said, I want to raise them differently because I want them to be able to find, you know, find their authentic self and who they really are, and find their, be free spirited, you know, and learn to think on their own. And so, you know, me and Michelle come from the big sister, you know, we're the big sisters. And so we were raised in a more stricter way, and taught to like, listen, you listen to what your parents says, and you don't talk, you know, you just listen. And so we're still learning that today too. And the work that we do, you know, how to speak up, and how to find that creativity later on in our life, you know, and not, we've always been so conformed to society growing up like that, you know. Uh, we talk about the, like the police, you know, like we're kind of square. We always talk about how we're kind of square, and we just listen and we just follow and we conform, and we want to, you know, and so there's so many people nowadays, and the world has grown in such a, I'd say an awesome, wonderful way, that people are speaking up for themselves nowadays, you know. And so we're growing into that, and we've learned a lot throughout the years, and growing and finding out about ourselves. And back in the early days too, we talked about the American Indian movement that was out here. So we talked about a time that it was shameful to be Native, and then nobody wanted to claim it. And then American Indian movement came along, Russell Means, Dennis Banks. And yes, there's controversy around that too. You know, we want to acknowledge that and say that as well, around um, some things that might have happened back in the day, but we also want to acknowledge and give thanks for them for speaking up for our Native people, and making us be proud to be Native American, to be Indians again, to be proud of who we are and our heritage. Back in the 1978, the Indian Religious Freedom Act came about. Before then, we weren't allowed to practice any of our ceremonies, or everything went underground, and we weren't allowed to be proud of who we were. We were ashamed of that. And so 1978, and American Indian movement came around, and they were wearing their braids, and everyone else started growing their hair out and wearing their braids. And I had braids when I was 5 and 6 year old too. And being exposed to that at a young age, you know, that pride and awareness, and it was a good time to be a part of that era growing up. And to this day, you know, we're able to practice our ceremony out and be proud of who we are. And I always say that we, you know, for a lot of us, we all go through each and different journeys in our lives, that you know, we start off with who creator, what family creator put us in, and and then we go along our journey. We grow up, and we become a teenager, and sometimes we wander off and we try to fit in with society, and then we sometimes we don't make right choices in life, and then we find our way back. You know, we find our way back to the way Creator wanted us, you know, where He wanted us to be at with our family. You know, whoever our family was chosen, that Creator chose to be our family, or blessed us with, and we find ourselves again. You know, we get back to our roots and our ground. And back in the 90s, there was even a time that when I would go around and I had my perm back in the day, um, I would like, people would be like, are you, wow, what nationality are you? Wow, I'd be like this, guess. And they'd be like, oh, are you Hawaiian? This is over in like, not on the res, this was in like Missoula area. Like, are you Hawaiian? I'll be like, yep, I'm Hawaiian. Yeah.
Well, Aurora, we'll let you, because I know you're on a roll. And just to pause for a moment, and allow our other sister, because this is the dialogue of just some Indian women just showing how we had our own identity traumas and how we are now. So let's take a moment and let's hook our other sister. and the three of us, we've been working for 20 plus years with Native families to find their real, true, authentic self. So, Michelle Antone, tell us who you are and give us a little bit of the history so that we could hook you into the conversation. Tell us who you are.
Well, good afternoon, good dash. That means good day in my language. I'm Michelle Antone. I'm from the Thono O'odham Nation, and I'm born and raised here in San Francisco, California. And our family ended up here through the relocation program. My dad signed up for that and ended up here. And my mom came on her own, but they met here. They both are from the same, our res, Arizona, Sells, Arizona. My mom's from Tapawa, grew up in Tapawa. And then, but they met, they went to high school together, but when they got out here, they got married and ended up staying here, surprisingly, because, a lot of our families through the relocation program come stay for a while, but they end up going back home. So a lot of, not too many families end up just staying where whatever relocation city they go to. My parents stayed here in San Francisco. I went through the public school system here, San Francisco Unified School District, and always felt like an outsider, I want to say, because I didn't know well, for one thing, there was very few Native students at my school, each school that I went to. So I always kind of felt like an outsider. The group that I, could relate most to was the Latinx community. And so I had a lot, and I grew up in the Mission District, which is, the Latino community here in San Francisco. So I that's who I kind of fit in with the most, that I felt that I fit in with the most. Mm-hmm. It's not till my parents found the Indian Center, which is not even that far from where I grew up at, that we felt like that was our extended family. The gatherings they would have there at the Indian Center, the dinners, community gatherings, always made us feel like that was family, and it felt like home. Growing up here in San Francisco, we didn't have any other relatives here. I had one aunt and one cousin. Other than that, everybody else is back home. So growing up in San Francisco, that's how I felt. It's kind of like, on my own, like I didn't have family or, community. That was my younger days. I would say up to middle school. High school, we were more involved with the community events. So I felt at least that connection to community. Even though we're in a tribal community here in San Francisco, I felt that connection, and it felt good to, to run into somebody on the street, another Native on the street, and be like, "Oh, hi, how are you?" Get so happy, or at a powwow, be excited. Like, there's a powwow this weekend, and powwow is actually not our kind of dancing. We do more of like a round, kind of like a round dance. But we fell in love with it, of course. The drumming, just the community bond that you get to go there and see other community that you don't see every day, and have that family connection, that feeling of family, felt good. And so we'd be at every powwow we could be, or every community event, just to feel that connection, because we didn't have our family, our tribal family here. So that's pretty much how I felt growing up. And then I got to work at the health center as a youth, as a youth summer employment job. And I started working with the health center a couple of summers, and I just knew I wanted to work for the health center because that's our community. Mm-hmm. And just knowing, one thing I do love about the health center is all the trainings that we get, all the cultural teachings that we get, or not just the medical and dental clinic, but it's the culture piece that helps people like myself who haven't grown up in my on my res with my people, to grow up in a urban city setting. The health center is what saved me, I want to say, because it made me feel like I don't have to feel bad about not knowing my language. I don't have to feel bad about not knowing all my traditions. I have picked up a lot of intertribal traditions and things along the way through the health center, and that has helped me. I use it. I know it may not come from my own people, but I use it as a way to keep well in my daily life. And I am proud to say I am 23 years sober. And I think,
Woo!
yeah, I'm very proud of that. Because growing up, I think that it was what I leaned on as a teen. You know, that's what I leaned on to help me with that uncomfortable feeling with not fitting in totally, you know, coming, you know, and with other friends in the community. Um, you know, partying was a big thing, you know, the teenagers and in high school. And I started doing that. I started drinking, and not that it was destroying my life, but it definitely would have if I kept, you know, we all know what that does. But I'm very grateful in my, when I found out I was having my daughter, that I knew because of the health center, fetal alcohol syndrome is not good. And I remember that from you, Theda, when you were working with the prenatal, just hearing that, having that embedded in my thinking, you know, because I worked at the health center, knew that, you know, I can't drink when I'm pregnant. And so from that point on, I stopped. I was able to stop. And the other thing that helped me quit drinking was I didn't want to, my child, I didn't know if I was having a boy or a girl. I didn't want my child to grow up in what I grew up, because my dad was an alcoholic, and it was chaotic, you know, and we had definitely had good times, but there was a lot of chaos and, you know, uh, hard times because of that. So I just knew that I didn't want my child to go through that. And if I could stop that, I'd want, you know, better for my child. So I was able to quit. And again, I have 23 years of sobriety. So I feel very blessed for that. And then I just continued to work with the health center, and that, you know, kept me the connection to the community. Um, I stepped away from the health center for about 10, 15 years and worked in the mainstream downtown San Francisco, and just always felt like I immediately felt a disconnect because I didn't know what was happening in the community. I didn't have those events, you know what was, you know, what event was happening, gathering. So I did that for a while, and I don't know if you want me to share all my story right now. Theda?
No, you know, no, Michelle, and I love your guys' enthusiasm, and that's why we wanted to invite you on, because I think that your stories, both the Aurora and Michelle, is golden. I think it's golden because your stories and just the things that you're sharing has so many learnings about how you heal and find your authentic self, and
Yeah.
how you find out how you belong. And so Native Wellness Institute, we're, especially, you know, we're in the 8th month of this pandemic, a lot of coping and pressures of many things, you know, like our election, etc., but it's a time when we can also heal more
Mm.
and find our authentic self. So I think that's good. So why don't I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, and
Mm-hmm.
I want you to speak from your heart, you know, because I know I know the both of you are not fake ass in any way. And I say, I know you're not fake. So, and that you don't put on presumptions, and you don't, and I just know that you'll answer from your heart. So the first question, because you both have children, and soon, you know, in the future, after post pandemic, you're probably going to have grandchildren, and then they're going to have children, and then they're going to have children, and they're, Olivia, your mother, and your Michelle, your mom, and your grandparents, that I knew them. We grew up in an era where they taught us. They would say, whatever you do it for the next 7 generations. You're the rock. You're the solid ground that is going to build the next 7 generations. And so my question is, and so just answer how you think. And Aurora, why don't you start? Is what have you been your thoughts with your children and your grandchildren to make sure that they are their authentic self?
Well,
How give us
yeah.
some, yeah.
So my husband is Pacific Islander, Samoan Polynesian, and both his parents are also full blood, and so he's a pretty much full blood. But I know there's a little pinch of German in there somewhere. But my children, so that makes them, half Samoan, and so to me, I mean, it's really important. I think about it all the time. We have a lot of youth out here and Native people that have lost that connection, and it probably happened from way back in the day when it was a shameful thing to be Native and their parents didn't want to have anything to do with it at all. And so I hear people today talking about, yeah, I have Native blood somewhere, but my grandma, she didn't talk too much about it, so I don't know anything about it. And so I think about it all the time, and I think about my children, and it's been really important to me to make sure that I bring them back home to connect, to our motherland. And I always encourage others that how important it is to go home and connect. And even if you might not know anybody from back home, go home as often as you can, when you can. And if you don't know anyone, introduce yourself and reach out, and outreach and try to find out more about your background, to stay connected and to stay connected with other natives in the community. We have a strong Native community here in the Bay Area. I'm very grateful for, and so we try to keep our children connected, to the cultural activities happening out here, and in addition to being able to go home. And that's some things that I think about all the time. There's some youth out there that they'll never have that connection, because nobody brought them home or nobody exposed them to, cultural things going on around in that Bay Area, to keep them connected in that way. And I think of the Gona work that we do here with the youth, how important that is too, because for a lot of our urban Native youth, it's almost like that one time a year that they're exposed to cultural, things, and they just love it so much. And so we also try to talk about how can we continue, doing the work throughout the year, with our programming, and trying to keep Gona going throughout the year, those Gona principles and teachings. And we teach cultures prevention out here in the work that we do at the Native American Health Center. And yeah, we talk about the importance of how culture is prevention, as Michelle Anton shared, and staying connected keeps us safe, keeps our youth safe.
Mm-hmm. And thank you, Aurora. And I'm just lighting a little bit of this. It's some people call it husk or bear root, and it's really helping a lot of tribes with in case they have COVID, it helps them with their breathing. So since we have so much of it laced around all of in your area and, in all of our tribes. And then I'm just, cause I'm your auntie, and I pray for you all the time, both of you. And we stay connected. And so I'm going into auntie role because, I invited you and Native Wellness Institute. They wanted me to talk about this subject. And so I'm asking you questions because I really believe that you, in your stories, will help a lot of people. And that's why I'm lighting this smudge. So Michelle, what do you think about this seventh generation, or what have you been, because you said that your daughter, once you made that, you broke the cycle. You just said, I am not going to raise my daughter around any of that drinking chaos, and you broke the cycle. But what are your other thoughts about their identity? I mean, are you like protective with her? Are you like guiding her? Because like in the old days, and this, Aurora, your grandparents, my parents were arranged marriages, and even down at Tahota Otam, our TOs, they made sure you were with another TO. But we're now in a time when that might not be possible, but we still want to cherish whoever the person is, and whatever blood they carry in them, it needs to be cherished. So what you thinking, Anton? Anton blood, let's hear.
So for myself, I'm Thona Autumn, and my daughter's dad is Nicaraguense and Costa Rican. So my daughter is half and half, half Tio and half Costa Rican and Nicaraguan. So I've always taught her to be proud of who she is. And even though we don't, know all of our traditions or all of our language, that we can still learn it. There's time to learn. And with this modern technology, there's actually a language class, our TO language class through our tribal college online that she's taking right now. And so my parents did know the language, but with the relocation, they didn't teach us as much as we wish we would have learned. But so my mom does have it, and she's a little rusty. But when my daughter talks to her with what she learns in class, it brings it back. So I always have taught, because like I said, growing up myself, I've always felt out of place, less than, because I didn't know, like especially in class, I didn't want the teacher to know I was Indian because I didn't want to get asked a question. But now, as through the work that I do, and I work with the Native American Health Center and the Indian Education Program, I know that it's okay for me not to know that, and that a teacher should not be putting that on a student to know, over 500 tribes ways and stuff. And so so that's helped me with my own self. So I embed that in my daughter, to like be proud of who you are. If you don't know everything about who you are, that's okay. The fact that we're still here today is powerful. We, if their plan, the colonizers' plan, went as they had planned, none of our native people would be here, but we are. We're still here, and we're thriving. We're thriving, and I understand the addictions have helped numb a lot of pain, a lot of trauma for our people. That's what we used for a while, but I believe it's changing. These times we're leaning towards sobriety and doing other things. Bringing back the traditions for those of us who don't. Who've been gone off to urban settings. Those ways are finding their way back to us. So I always embed that in my daughter, and my daughter is a very strong young lady, Ariana. Her name's Ariana Anton Ramirez, and she's very passionate about, about education. She just graduated from college. She got her BA in political science and American Indian Studies and a minor in Spanish. She's a world traveler. She's traveled to go to her Central America, Spain. And I'll never forget when she went to Spain and she said, "Mom, is it bad for me to be excited to see Columbus's tomb?" I said, and I said, "No." I said, "It's okay, get excited because you're standing over it."
Yeah.
So that, I can't imagine what that felt like, standing in front of Columbus's tomb. But she's very outspoken. That's the other thing, is as a indigenous woman, I've always taught her to speak your mind. If you what you feel, be able to speak out and say what you feel is right, and don't let anybody hold you back. Man hold you back, or anybody. I often got calls when she was in high school from her history teacher. She took AP history, and I often got calls that she was talking out of line, that she was talking back to the teacher. And I said, well, I'm glad she is. I mean, I don't want her to do it in a disrespectful way, but I'm glad she's outspoken and knows that, if she feels something is, she doesn't believe in that, she can say that. And so I've taught her to be strong and be proud of who you are, and know that if we don't know all of our traditions, that's okay. We can learn it. We can learn it. We can continuously learn and find that, but it should not make us feel bad about who we are.
Oh,
So,
I love that. And I see, I even see, your son, Kevin, Aurora, and him finding himself. And I see your daughter. Did she graduate from Berkeley? Was it Berkeley she graduated?
No, she went to Augsburg University in Minneapolis.
Oh, okay. So my second question And we do have, we still got about 15-20 minutes here. Is I wanted you to talk about your singing group, one, and then I wanted you to talk about how you guys have gotten all of the sisters into the water walk. So like the singing and the water walk to find your authentic self. And so whoever wants to start, Aurora or Michelle, just and then when we're winding down, you know, even though we're zooming, you know, we're trying new things. I'd like the both of you to sing for us. You know, we see if we can do it. You know, even though we're not in the same place. I mean, you know. Anyway, that's a thought. So, tell us a little bit about how the sisters are singing and your water walk that you organized.
Let's see. I was just also trying to keep, yeah, just
I
keeping
think
in mind also. Oh, go ahead. Huh?
I was just gonna say with our
Did
singing
you say
group,
something, Michelle?
I was just gonna say with our singing group, we did ribbon skirt workshops for a lot of the women, and it's been a while. The community, the women have been asking for a singing group. Let's sing. And so during that ribbon skirt workshop, we decided to get a group together, and it just so happened we had lost one of our community members, Jessica Alva, because of domestic violence.
Oh yeah.
So we started advocating with the city and county around getting justice for Jessica. And so we, because they were saying it was a suicide, and we were saying, no, it's not. And so we're advocating for that. And a lot of our singing group, the ladies wanted to do that advocacy work. So we've been doing that for a long time. And it's just a way for us to bond together. Again, being here in this urban setting and not home with our relatives, it's a way for us to bond together, to learn songs just for our own healing, you know, myself included. Just because we work for the health center doesn't mean we're healed. It's an ongoing life ongoing process. And so even speaking for myself, it's been really healing, because it's, you know, hard times right now, and the work can get heavy at times, you know. So that brings a lot of joy, a lot of peace, a lot of healing to myself. And I hear that often from our women, that they have somewhere to go. And before we have our singing practice, we usually open up with a talking circle, and that the talking circle can get pretty deep. And so it's just a good way to bond. And it's been really hard these past few months not to sit together in a circle and sing our songs and have our talking circle, but we do it through Zoom, and it's been working, you know, the best that it can be through Zoom. And so I think it's just a very healing thing that we can offer, you know, to our community, and just to strengthen our sisterhood. And to, again, it's also helping us with advocacy work throughout the city with like MMIW work. I'll let you out whatever you want, Aurora.
Oh, that means your turn.
Throw the ball. Thanks, Michelle. I like hearing your you know, your view and perspective as one of the singers in the group. And yeah, we come together to sing, and we have talking circle. We support one another. Before it was in person, and now it's online, and we still have some women joining us a couple times a month. We do it 2 times a month. And I think of like some of the women, there's you know, women with different backgrounds there. And one of our members who, you know, sometimes when our members come to groups and stuff, you know, they'll sign in, and they have to put, it'll say like, what tribe are you? And some people will put, we notice that when sometimes some members come around, they'll put one tribe because they're kind of questionable, you know, and sometimes we'll notice later on that it might change a little bit, but it's not our job to judge, you know, or to call them out on it, but maybe in a good way, you know, check in with them and try to help them. We have had we say here at the health center that it takes a herd, it's not just one or two of us doing the work. It's many, many, many hands doing this important work in the community, healing work, and providing a place of welcoming, providing a place of inclusiveness, that there's no wrong way to do things, and the Gona teachings, instilling those Gona teachings into our work that we do here. There's no wrong way to do things, and every moment is a learning and teaching opportunity. And so, one of my coworkers actually had a couple of years of genealogy class, having someone come in from the Mormon temple to try and help people trace their ancestry. And there's so many people that come to the health center and they're looking for, can you help me trace my ancestry? And even more nowadays, ever since the Cobell payment came out. But yeah, more people, they want to know, and more people are taking, what's it called, the 23andMe test, right? And finding out that they have some kind of native, in them, but not sure what that is. And so, but I think the important part is just, no matter, I shared with one of our community members who felt bad that she hears Native people telling their stories of going home on the res or connecting and having that connection. And she's like, I don't have any stories to share like that, and I was like, oh my gosh, but your story is so important. Your story here, growing up out here in San Francisco, and what identity you do have, and honor and acknowledge that. And your mom might not have talked about it, but you have some Native blood in you. And so honor and acknowledge that, and share your story, because there's many other people out there that share that same story, and you can help them find that connection too, and then also I just wanted to share also that it's about, I always say this, it's about, you think of what do they call them, the 12 grandfather teachings, and I keep talking about, it's about honesty, integrity, good character, and building good relationships, and just really being honest with yourself and who you are and where you come from, and acknowledging that, and transparency, as much as you can in a healthy way with each other. And that's what we do in our women's group, is we have that transparency with each other, and we support each other the best that we can, and provide a safe space, and as well as with a lot of all our other groups we do here. Here's another example of one of our beading groups. It falls under, the funding falls under a city grant, which is under the behavioral health wellness as well. And there was a lady that would come in, and she was stringing beads, and a lot of them were just stringing beads, and big beads, and they would just come in and make these big bulky necklaces, right, with big stones on them and everything. And then I said, well, let's move into, something a little more detailed. And so we started trying to move into something a little more detailed with smaller beads. And she had a hard time, she just was like nervous, it was just too much for her. She couldn't do that. And so we said, it's okay, this is the wellness department, and we don't want you to come here and feel stress and anxiety about not being able to work on a beaded piece, a smaller, more detailed beaded piece. And so, it's more important that we just provide a safe space that they can come to and feel safe. And it's our job to be neutral in the work that we do, because there's also the ones that come that get mad and upset about people, claiming to be something more Native than they might be. And so it's our job to remain neutral and provide that wellness. You want to add anything in, Michelle?
Yeah, Michelle, what are your thoughts on that? Because I'll just, when I was growing up, it was, I think when Dancing with Wolves came out, and Kevin Costner tried to be Indian, there was the phenomena that all kinds of people, they became wannabes. They wanted to be, and I marvel at that, because I've never seen humans, want to be Chinese or want to be German or want to be, but boy, they sure want to be Indian. So,
Exactly.
Michelle, what you thinking? What you thinking?
I think there's a fine line with that. I think some people are just wannabes and just want to be it's popular or whatever. But then there's some who truly can connect with our ways, and I
Mm,
feel like if they're not exposing it and not um, being disrespectful, just using it for their own self. Like we do have a lot of some community that come here who are non-native and
mhm,
they're actually using our ways for healing.
mm,
I think that's okay. Just don't be disrespectful. Don't be exploiting it. Don't be saying that you're native if you're not. I feel like, kind of like religion, like anybody can go to any other kind of religion because that's what they connect with. But and so I don't know, I feel like there's a fine line between truly wanting the healing and using and our ways, not using our ways, but like connecting with our ways, and don't and it shouldn't be in a disrespectful way or trying to exploit it.
Yeah.
Um,
mhm.
but if you are just wanting to be native and trying everything, the look, whatever that look is, the ways and saying you are, then that's not right. Don't do that. That's not right. Don't exploit our culture, our ways, and
Or capitalize, right?
Our
uh,
capitalize.
As long as you're
Yes,
not capitalizing off it and that, you are helping the people, helping the native people.
yeah. I mean, sometimes I see sage for sale on Facebook or something. I'm like, what is this? Don't come to the sweat lodge to learn and then try to do your own. You know,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Well,
And then so many people are disconnected, or because they were adopted out or they went to boarding school and they didn't know, and
Mhm.
they
yeah,
don't know. So yeah, it's really kind of hard now because there's so many interracial marriages, and you don't know if they're being honest about not knowing who they are, being maybe foster cared out or something, um adopted out. They don't know. It's hard to tell sometimes.
Mhm. Mhm.
one of the beginning effort things that Native Wellness is doing, and we're doing it November 17th and 18th, where our online training is about being an ally, because there is a role for wannabes, especially if they come and they marry in and they have children, is that
Yeah.
they can be a decolonized ally, or
Mm.
they be, because every human being is important, but we're just trying to help people, like you said, Michelle, do it in a respectful way. So we're actually going to have a training on that, and we'll let please come. We're just trying to do some of the healing work, and the helping people be okay. Like I'm working with some people who have 5 tribes in them,
Mm.
and they can roll in any of those tribes, but they're finding peace and healing with finding the way that they feel okay with who they are, and they're defining, not letting anyone else define them, in quantum or anything like that. So we got a few more minutes before we and we'll invite you back, so don't feel like don't, just,
Yeah.
this is to plant the seed, because I
Yeah.
just really wanted to invite both of you, because I see the families that you're working with. I mean, there's 150,000 Indians kind of cruising around where you live, and I see the families that you help, the young people, especially with your Gona efforts, find themselves, and so that's why I wanted to invite you on.
Mhm.
What would you like to in your close? What's your closing comments? And then, if you want to sing, I don't want to. I just said that because you both have beautiful voice.
Um,
What would you like to share with our audience? Around healing your identity before we close today.
I'm thinking about, I also want to throw in there, colonization, right? how colonizers' ways are to separate us. And so, and a lot of that is also, you know, that lateral oppression too, just throwing that out there, you know, happens a lot in our Native communities too. And so just being aware of that, being aware of what that is and what that looks like.
For me, I would say because of my own story, because I was born and raised in San Francisco, I'd like to speak to the young folks who are in school struggling or people who come to the city and feel lost. Find the Native agencies in your city. Find, because even if there were a health center, we do groups. And the groups is what I feel have saved me, you know, my wellness. I, even though I work now for the health center, it's why I work here, because I feel that it's helped my family so much. The groups that are being offered the community gatherings, just because we're so far away from our family, this became our urban family here, is the community here. And just feeling that connection and learning new songs, learning, you know, different, you know, ways of different tribes, and just being able to you know, do those things here in San Francisco, California, has been what has helped me through, especially through my sobriety, that I don't need the alcohol, that I don't need, you know, the negativity, that I can still have hope, and that I can feel good about who I am, even though I don't know all my language, even though I don't know all my traditions. Don't let anybody make you feel less than if you don't. And just find that Native connection in your city, and that will help you. If you're in an urban city and you're not on your res or you're not near your family, there's a Native community. No matter where you're at, find them. And even if there's not an agency that doesn't have groups going on, create your own talking circle with people that you know, and just follow the rules and be respectful, and just, you know, have the, you can do it on your own. And I mean, it's nice when you have an agency that helps you, but if you don't, you can still do those things. You can still sing, you can still teach each other drumming, beating, you can still have your own groups and connection. So I really believe in the work that we do, and that's why I'm here.
Yeah.
And such an honor to be on this, on your wellness power hour. Thank you for the invite.
Thank you, Theda.
No, thank both of you. You know, we're Native Wellness Institute, you know, we're just growing. Like I said, this is the 200th Power Hour, and we have so many allies. And so we always welcome you. You're part of us and we're part of you. Do you feel like singing?
Sure.
Sure.
Okay.
I was laughing because Michelle's in the room next door to me, right?
We can hear each other.
Michelle, I was wondering if you should come and sit in the chair in here and we could stay social distance.
Yeah, I can do that.
Bring your laptop with you.
Yeah, why don't you go sit with her? Because
Yeah,
I think that might.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and while she's moving over there, you know, I'll just say, you know, this morning when I was praying, and I had this overwhelming excitement that our people, because of what's happening in our country, are choosing the higher ground about being in our culture, and that we will still continue things like this singing. So I think that your singing, and as it goes out there, will help all of us. And that's an indigenous and a tribal teaching. So I just wanted to comment before. So it's good to see. So are you one buffalo length apart? What we call it one length. Okay. So I'll hand it over to you to do our closing.
Okay.
Gakko, go ahead.
Okay. Hey, hang on one second. Get real fancy here. I think we kind of froze up. Hang on. Uh-oh. Oh, can you hear us? Are you there?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. I just want to make sure our connection is okay. We're on still?
Yes.
Okay, good. Here we go. Ah, hey, ah, ho, hey, oh, hey, way, oh, hey, oh. Oh, way, oh, way, ha, 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 hey, ah, way, ah, way, oh, way, ah, way, oh, hey, hey, ha, ya. Ah, way, ah, ho, hey, oh, hey, way, oh, hey, oh. Oh.
Oh, well, thank you, girls, and we'll be in touch, and Kitsikako, ma'am, and we love you very much. I'm sending you hugs and thank
Trying to
you
stay
for your
social
voice
distance
going
over
out
here.
there.
Thank
To,
you.
yeah,
Love
this is
you. Yeah, love
the,
you.
the Zoom hug.
Yeah.
And so, and thank you, Shailene, for, being our production. We just love
Eileen.
you.
Thank you.
And we'll say kitakito matsuno. We'll see you later. We never say goodbye because we'll see you later with that. So see you, girls.
Okay.